Hey, what's up guys, it's DarkArmedDuelist, and today we got an OCG ban list. So without further ado, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell notification so you can become part of our notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below for all those awesome rewards. So let's go ahead and go over this OCG ban list. So first off, it will take effect July 1st, 2024, which is not too long away, but let's go ahead and see what got hit. So first off, we have Catapult Turtle and Kaiser Coliseum. So Catapult Turtle, I can kind of see why that card would be hit because there's a lot of FTKs running around right now in the OCG, and Catapult Turtle is a part of a lot of them where you can actually just tribute a monster that has a massive attack points and then just basically FTK the opponent where they cannot even play, which is absolutely insane. We then have Kaiser Coliseum that got banned, and I can totally see this card getting hit in every single format because this card is very similar to cards like Mystic Mine, where it just makes an unfair game state where you can only control the same amount of monsters that your opponent controls when this card's on the field, which is a big downside and just makes for unfair game states, especially when your opponent puts like a towers like boss monster on the field. And plus, Konami is taking a great stance against floodgates, being able to just get rid of a bunch of those in the TCG, OCG, and in Master Duel, which is great. I love that about this, and it's just really nice. That's another reason why I wanted to go over the ban list with you guys, is because a lot of times when you see cards hit in the OCG, sometimes we do see those cards get hit in the TCG, so this might have effects and echoes into the TCG and into Master Duel. So that's another reason why I wanted to go over this list with you guys. But these two hits, totally fine. I'm surprised about them though, because I thought you'd actually see more hits like Beatrice going to 0 instead of it going to 1, which you guys will see when we get into the limit section. Speaking of the limit section, let's go ahead and check that out. So first off, we have Performage Plushfire with an errata, we have Magispector Unicorn, Kirin, we have Beatrice, we have SP Little Knight, Snake Eye Ash, number 40 Gimmick Puppet Who Strings, Sangan Summoning, and Summon Limit all going to 1. So let's go over these one by one because that's a lot of moves on the list. And first off, we have Plushfire. Plushfire with an errata I think is totally fine. They just recently released support for the Performage monsters, and so I feel like them errataing this card is the perfect time to do this because this card was actually part of an emergency ban list a long time ago, I believe. And so by them putting this card back to 1 after they errated it and made it a once per turn effect, I feel like it's totally fine. You could see this card probably coming back to 3 eventually, probably with the errata. But without the errata, absolutely not. This card was entirely broken and you could not even bring this card back to 1. But again, with the once per turn effect, I think it's more fair. So I feel like it's probably fine to be able to put this card back at 1. We have Magispector Unicorn Kirin. I feel like this again is totally fine to be able to put this card back at 1 because all it does is bounce a card off the field. But again, they have basically Electromite in the OCG where we don't have that card in the TCG, and so I feel like with them having this card in the OCG, you got to watch out for it a little bit because this card can be absolutely broken, but I feel like it's probably fine. I feel like Kirin coming back to 1 is going to be okay. I don't think it's going to do that much. However, Beatrice going to 1 I don't think is right. I think that card should have been completely banned because it's a lot like Lavalval Chain. I think cards that are from the extract that just send cards from the deck to the graveyard are completely unfair, and this card being tied into Fiendsmith because it's a level or rank 6 monster makes it so easy to summon by using the Fiendsmith engine in just about anything, which is not fair for any deck to be able to do. So Beatrice is one of those cards that I think will eventually get banned like Lavalval Chain, and I feel like it's one of those cards that just needs to go ahead and get banned in every format because of Fiendsmith, and it's just absolutely insane because you can send so many good targets to the graveyard to make this card absolutely broken, and it's just not fair. Then we have SP Little Knight going to 1. SP Little Knight, I believe, was previously at 2 on the list, and so I feel like this card going to 1 is fine, but it's kind of weird that they would put this card to 1 because the majority of decks only play 1. But I feel like it's one of those hits that they kind of were just moving something to move it because eventually it may get banned. It really may get banned in the future because it's a double interruption. It does so much. It spot removes cards off the field. It also gets rid of itself and another card on the field later drawn in the turn when your opponent uses an effect, which is just absolutely broken, and it's just not really a fair card. And plus, it's just in a generic staple that you can make in any deck, which they've already hit cards in the TCG like Baron, which they didn't in the OCG, and hit cards like Borreload Savage in the TCG, but they didn't hit him in the OCG. So I feel like this card is one of those cards that eventually may get banned, but it's kind of weird to see it go to 1 because they only really play 1. I mean, some decks play 2, but it was at 2 previously and now it's at 1, so it's kind of weird. It's a really weird hit to me. Then we have Snake Eye Ash. I feel like Snake Eye Ash should be a 1 in every single format, and I think this is something we probably will see in the TCG in the next list. I feel like this is something that really needs to happen because Snake Eye Ash, it really, by hitting this card, it really makes the deck less consistent, and it's like the main combo starter for the entire deck. So by hitting Snake Eye Ash, I feel like it makes the deck a little bit more fair. I still think that Flameberg being banned was the correct hit, but by putting Snake Eye Ash to 1, it does make the deck a little bit more inconsistent, which is totally fine. But again, this probably should happen in every single format, along with Wanted and probably Bonfire going to 1 as well, just to make the deck completely inconsistent, because the deck is crazy powerful. Even with Snake Eye Ash at 1, it's still playable in Master Duel, so I feel like this card being at 1 is okay for now, but they're probably going to have to hit the deck again later. Okay, so number 40, Gimmick Puppet of Strings. This card is a part of a lot of FTKs because of Gimmick Puppet's new support, and with the field spell, it makes it completely unfair. This card going to 1 alongside other cards on this list, I feel like is totally fine, but this card had to get hit eventually, or its chaos form had to get hit because this card was just doing so much burn damage to the opponent. This is actually the card that distributes the string counters, which enables a lot of the basically FTKs to be able to use in that deck and Gimmick Puppets. So I feel like putting this card to 1 is totally fine, but this card alongside its chaos form just enable too many crazy plays to be able to FTK your opponent using Gimmick Puppet's new support. So by putting this card to 1, it makes the deck a little bit more fair. They're still strong, don't get me wrong, but by putting it to 1, it makes them fair. Sangan Summoning going to 1. If you guys have seen anything about the OCG meta, right now Tempai and Fiendsmith decks are just completely just like making it insane in the OCG, and they're taking up the majority of the representation in the OCG meta. So by putting Sangan Summoning to 1, it kind of had to happen. Like Snake Eye, Fiendsmith decks, and Tempai are like the 3 big heavy hitters, and that's what they're hitting, it looks like, on this list by trying to put Beatrice to 1, and then putting Sangan Summoning to 1, and then also putting Snake Eye Ash to 1. It looks like they're moving cards away from being like so consistent, or decks being so consistent, by hitting some of their big combo pieces. But by putting Sangan Summoning to 1, I feel like it's very fair and the correct hit for this deck, but they're probably going to have to do more to this deck in the future, because by hitting Sangan Summoning, it does hurt the consistency of the deck and hurt a lot of the plays with the deck with like Trident Dragon, but the deck is still insanely consistent at OTKing your opponent and going second to be able to OTK your opponent. But this card was basically like Miscellaneousaurus, so it probably did need to go to 1. Now, Summon Limit going to 1, I feel like is not enough. I feel like they probably should have just completely banned this card like they did in the TCG. I feel like that was the correct move, because in the TCG, what a lot of players would do would side this card, and you'd basically just make your field in your deck, and then you would flip this card up going into your opponent's turn if they were going second, and then once you would do that, you'd have an insane field and your opponent would only be able to summon twice. That's not fair in the game, and so I feel like by putting this card to 1, it's just going to enable it to be a generic one of in just about every side deck, along with some of the other floodgates. So I feel like this card should probably be banned because it's not fair, and it probably will get banned in the coming format on the next list. Because it did get banned in the TCG, I feel like it probably should get banned in the OCG. So for the semi-limits, we have Blaster, Redox, Tidal, and Tempest, all of the Dragon Rulers going to 2, which is totally fine in the semi-limit category of this list. We also have Spiral, Quick Fix going to 2, and we have Bonfire going to 2, which again is another Snake Eye hit. So by putting all the Dragon Rulers to 2, I feel like that's totally fine. I feel like it's really good for the game as well, because it might draw a lot of veteran players back into the game because they're seeing the Dragon Rulers come back, which the game does need to bring players back into the game, especially with the current state of the format. So I feel like by putting all of the Dragon Rulers at 2, even though it might be a little bit chaotic, especially especially with all the new dragon support that we're getting with the Light and Darkness dragon cards coming out. I feel like this is fine, and I feel like it's probably needed for the game to kind of like energize the game and give it something new and fresh to be able to basically bring back those cards, even though they're a part of a tier 0 format. And it's insane to me that we're bringing cards back that were part of a tier 0 format. So then we have Spiral Quick Fix. Again, I feel like this card is probably fine to be able to bring back to 2 in the OCG. You don't see a lot of like Spiral decks topping, and I don't think this is going to change it a lot by putting this card back to 2. It does mean that they can play cards like Machine Duplication, I believe, but other than that, don't feel like it's going to do all that much. We then have Bonfire going to 2. This card is like Rhoda to me. I feel like it should probably eternally stay at 1 because it is such a consistency card for Pyro decks. And so I feel like they probably should have moved this card to 1 instead of moving it to 2. But I can kind of see what they're doing in the OCG by slowly hitting decks. But I feel like they really need to hit Snake Eye quickly to be able to put Bonfire to 1, at least on the next list. I feel like it does need to go to 1. Probably, maybe Flameberg getting banned as well. But we'll see. If they ban Flameberg, that probably just takes Snake Eye completely out of the like contending for being able to be played, because they don't have their block dragon anymore. And so I feel like by putting Bonfire to 2, they're kind of seeing if they can like hurt the consistency of the deck enough to where it's not going to be as broken. So for the unlimits, we have Glow Bulb, we have Ib, we have Thunder Dragon Colossus, we have Predaplant Orthoscorpio, and we have Time Seal. These are some really interesting moves on the list because we have Glow Bulb, because I feel like Glow Bulb is fine because it's a once per duel effect. I don't feel like this is going to do a lot in the meta. I feel like by putting this card to 3, we already have Needle Fiber banned, so I feel like it's totally fine to be able to bring this card back to 3. We have Ib. Again, a lot of decks only play this card at 1, so I feel like it's fine to be able to bring this card back to 3. Thunder Dragon Colossus, however, I've been confused. Konami's been taking a big stance against Floodgates, and this card is literally the king of the Floodgates. You have a card that is basically a walking mistake that makes it so your opponent can't add cards from their deck to her hand. It's one-sided, and I don't feel like it should be back at 3. I feel like this card should be at 1 eternally in every single format because it's such a powerful boss monster. However, I feel like this card is only going to boost at 3 Thunder Dragon, which might get broken. We have Chaos Synchro, and we have, or not Chaos Synchro, we have Chaos Synchro decks, and we have decks that are just Chaos decks that I feel like this card is going to boost. And I feel like this card going back to 3 is a little bit weird because they're hitting cards like Summon Limit that's already a Floodgate, but they're also putting cards that are Floodgate monsters back to 3, like Thunder Dragon Colossus. So this is a little bit of a weird hit. I don't feel like this card should have gone back to 3. I feel like it should have stayed at 1. We then have Predaplant Orthoscorpio. Orthoscorpio going to 3 is fine. We've already seen cards like Terratop go back to 3, which is way more broken than Orthoscorpio. And I feel like Terratop being at 3 kind of shows the fact that cards of that basically format are totally fine to be able to go back to 3. And by putting cards like Orthoscorpio, you can hit this card with a lot of different cards like Imperm, Ash, Valor, anything like that. You can instantly hit Orthoscorpio with, and it just deals with this card to where you can't summon that Darling Cobra, and it also makes it so you have to play a brick. But it does let you search cards like fusion spells when you summon out that copy of Darling Cobra, which is a little bit weird, but I feel like being able to put this card back at 3 is probably fine. You don't see a lot of decks playing it anymore, but I feel like something that they need to do in the OCG is probably ban Verte Anaconda. We then have Time Seal. Time Seal is at 3 again. This is a weird hit. This card, this is totally weird. So by putting Time Seal at 3, there's a lot of ways to be able to get to this card with cards like Lith, Lady of Lament. There's Trap Trick. There's a lot of different ways that you can get to this card now that it's at 3. Previously, I believe this card was at 1, but it being at 3 is really, really weird to be able to put this card at 3 because now you can just skip multiple turns and it's not fair. I feel like this card at 3 is a little bit slow though because it is a trap, and I feel like that's the logic at moving this card to 3 is that it is a little bit slow because it's a trap. If you do end up going second, you won't be able to basically use it until the following turn, which is a little bit of a downside. Your opponent's probably already made their field, but this card could be a side deck card in the future. I'm not sure, but it's a little bit weird. One card that I will say to you guys that I'm surprised did not get banned is actually Maxi, and I know a lot in the community has been talking about that Maxi should have got banned because we just got the new like jellyfish looking card. I think it's called Chummy. We did get that card, which I feel like probably was Max C's replacement, but by them having both of those cards at 3 in the OCG, you basically have 6 copies of Max C. That's just insane. So I feel like that's pretty crazy that they would like have basically 6 Max C's in the OCG, and I'm surprised that they didn't ban Max C because that's something that a lot of players thought was coming. And honestly, I was kind of on that boat that I thought that Max C was probably going to get banned in the OCG because of cards like Chummy that came out. But maybe they're not banning it just yet because I'm not sure. I feel like it probably should have been hit because they did kind of power creep it a little bit, or made a more balanced version, I guess would be the better way of saying it. They made a more balanced version of Maxi in the form of Chummy. And so I feel like by putting that card to be banned, it would make the format a little bit more balanced. And I'm kind of afraid of what they're going to do in the TCG when we get that hand trap. So that's going to do for this one, guys. Tell me what you guys think of this list. I think it's an okay list. I don't think it's like really insane. I think one of the more notable things is that we got all the dragon rulers back to 2, and that's pretty cool in the OCG. Maybe we'll see something like this in the TCG, because a lot of times we will see hits that happen in the TCG, or in the OCG, excuse me, and then they move into the TCG. So I feel like something like this could happen in the TCG in the future, but who knows? I feel like it would be really interesting to see all the Dragon Rulers back to 2, but maybe we'll go a format in the OCG and see how it affects the OCG. But that's going to do for this one, guys. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell there so you can become part of Notification Squad, and we'll see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys.